was faced with the question of going to address the Central Region House of Chiefs. I thought, I got the feeling, had a brainwave, that the best topic to talk about was agriculture.
Did you have any prior interest in agriculture till
then? I couldn't say I had prior intensive interest, except that, you know, at Mampanashanti, we went, you know, it's a forest area. The school had its own farm, and, you know, the environment made one get some feeling about agriculture. And of course, when I was at the Ghana Military Academy too, I was sent to Pokwase, near Accra, where the Ministry of Agriculture had a poultry farm, to look at the poultry farm and how it was run. And then I brought it up to the Ghana Military Academy as a sort of extramural activity. That was just in brief what the background I had in agriculture. But that I should talk on agriculture to the House of Chiefs was something that I didn't think about. It came to me. So I addressed the House of Chiefs on agriculture, mobilizing agriculture, Green Revolution, which was subsequently co-named Operation Feed Yourself.
So this, in effect, defines you as the initiator of Operation Feed Yourself.
I would not say that I got the idea. The idea struck me.
But you initiated the whole process?
Well, perhaps with all humility, I would accept that description.
Operation Feed Yourself was one of Ghana's most radical agriculture policy initiatives. Can you tell us a bit about it?
I had the feeling that there was a need somewhere. And when I thought about agriculture, I thought that that was the most important event or requirement which faced the country.
Can I just intersperse this?
Yes.
At the time, how would you define the state of Ghana's agricultural industry?
At that time, I wouldn't say things were very bright, or we were moving ahead, I should say so. Okay. Now, I'll give you a little history which motivated me, which pushed me to be convinced that agriculture was important. During the First Republic, the political party in power, the CPP, tried to build up a monolithic party to which everybody, every organization in Ghana was forced to belong to. And naturally, the farmers were drafted into it. Now, the farming industry became highly politicized. And those in office, the farmers' groups, tended to be more interested in pleasing the politicians than in pleasing the farmers. It reached a point where they even threatened the farmers who didn't toe their line with detention. So the farmers were cowed and withdrew into their shell. But the farmers had been for a long time the mainstay of the country's economy. They have been planting, or they were planting cocoa far back. And the good thing about the cocoa farmer was that the cocoa farmer whilst planting or minding his farm, also planted foodstuffs, cocoa yam, cassava, yam, and those things. And this helped the food situation in the country. When the politicians were stepped in and the farmers withdrew into their shell, they tended to mind their own business and to plant as little as they could to feed themselves and their families. So the population at large was not getting the food which they were previously getting from the farming stock.
And this affected?
This affected food production very, very, very much. Well, cocoa was doing well because the farmers' primary object was to plant cocoa.
Yeah.
But the subsidiary benefits we should have got through the farmer all vanished. And it was my aim to bring this back. This is what brought me the idea of Operation Feed Yourself, which was in essence to produce enough food to feed ourselves and also to provide raw materials for industry, for our industry, so that we don't have to import raw materials from abroad to feed the industries which were springing up in Ghana.
So the farmer definitely had a key role.
The farmer, to me, the farmer had been the pivot of our agriculture development. Unfortunately, as I said, the farmers' influence, the farmers' benefit to the country were all lost when the farming organizations were politicized.
With Operation Feed Yourself, the farmer then became central.
To me, and the Operation Feed Yourself, the farmer was the pivot of the vanguard of the revolution. And it made me feel that if we gave the farmer his proper role, made the farmer happy, then the farmer would produce enough food to meet the country's need. So I devised the 3 R's. R1 is recognition. R2, replenishment. R3, reward. Now, R1, recognition. The farmer had always been kept to the background. The farmer had not been made to feel that he is doing something for the country. The farmer's interests were all lost. So R1, recognition, is that as far as I was concerned, I was going to acknowledge the importance of the farmers. I was going to acknowledge the contribution of the farmers. So, as a regional commissioner in Cape Coast, all the official functions, I ensured that not only the big farmers were invited, but the medium and the low-class farmers and fishermen were invited. And when they came to the residency, I made sure that I talked to them. I talked to some of the big shots like lawyers and judges and doctors. But I also ensured that I gave the farmer enough attention, talk to them about their families, talk to them about their welfare, talk to them about their happiness, talk to them about what they were doing. And in a way, in the army, we use the word morale. In this way, I raised the morale of the farmers.
Motivated them.
Yes. Now, with the second R, I said was replenishment. I could not believe that the farmer, for all that he was doing, would be subjected to difficulties in getting the instruments were to work with. Again, well, I would refer it to the First Republic. Farmers' organizations were denied simple basic instruments like cutlasses. And then the profiteers came in. Because of politics, farmers were not even getting gamalin, which was used in spraying cocoa, and a lot of things. And I thought that if we were expecting the farmer to work, then we should ensure that the farmer got the tools for his trade. Cutlasses, garment insecticides, the fisherman, his net, and later we introduced outboard motors, the lead, and so forth and so on.
So you had to create a new budget to secure these?
Yes, of course. And I ensured that those things took priority in my operation. And this made the farmer happy. I went out of the... In doing that, I also set up a network of distribution. So the farmer did not have to come down to Accra to buy cutlasses. The farmer did not have to come to Accra to buy anything. The channels I established, local councils, even the churches were all roped into the distributive network. So the things were moving to the farm gate were to help the farmer.
This project was pioneered in the central region?
First of all, in the central, because it was there that I launched the Operation Feed Yourself. I roped in all these. Now, of course, when I became the Commissioner for Agriculture, I extended and expanded these things. So the farmer got his instrument of work, farmer and fisherman, then reward. The farmer, we had always tended to forget the farmer and what he earned. As long as there were food in the market, we were okay. How much the farmer had to get out of it, to eke out a living for himself, was nobody's business. Now, on the Operation Feed Yourself, we thought about what the farmer would get from his produce, how the farmer was going to get his produce to the market. This brought us to the question of feeder routes, cooperative purchases, transport, and so forth and so on. So we were able to ensure, and of course, in some of the areas, the government gave guaranteed prices for rice, for maize, and so forth and so on. So the farmers now saw physical cash coming into his hands to help him and his family. And he was therefore spared the worry of going to borrow. And some of these money lenders were charging about 100%, 200%. And the farmer sank more and more and more into debt. So we made the farmer
coming to his own.
Or coming to his own,
Yeah.
see that there was a future for him. And once you made the farmer feel that, oh, they worked very hard, and so they did on the Operation Feed Yourself.
Was there other aspects of Operation Feed Yourself which did not involve the farmer as a country a whole, wherever people mobilized, like the youths? And I quite remember as a child.
I thought that the youth were part of this, all of it. So you remember, I launched the Operation Feed Yourself in March. In March, I mobilized the university students at Cape Coast University to go and cut sugarcane at Commander. And the students were happy. They enjoyed it. The organization was made in such a way that they felt a part of the system. They felt a part, they felt that they were carrying a part of a revolution.
Yeah.
Not that they were being told. They felt they were being. So the students, the young people, were an integral part of the whole process.
Because that was quite unique in its own. The first time, like, you empower the youth and get them involved in the processes that constitutes country building.
Yes.
And how was that sustained? I mean, Operation Feed Yourself, why wasn't it sustained? Because from what you're saying, it was a good basis for development.
Operation Feed Yourself was not a static policy. It was a dynamic policy. And we didn't stand at one point. Now, when the mobilization had reached a certain point, then I had come to the Ministry of Agric. Of course, you should remember that in Cape Coast, I spent only 1 year. Then I was promoted, or I was brought to be the commissioner for Agric. By that time, I started thinking of what to do next. And the next project I saw in my mind's eye was irrigation. So we brought in irrigation. Irrigation, we didn't want to start it in a big way. I have never liked starting things in a big way, because if they fail heavily. I preferred always to start from humble beginnings.
Pilot projects.
A pilot project. So we brought in woolly irrigation. Of course, when I was in the central region, we had started a very small irrigation project for rice at Kakomodo, where there was a small river. And it went well. So I had some ideas. And of course, when I came over to Britain and America, I also saw a few things there. But anyway, I thought that we should start the next phase, which is irrigation. Because I had always had in my mind the question of drought. If, however much the farmer worked, rains didn't come, that was the end of the matter. So I had always had at the back of my mind the question of how do we deal with drought. So we started with irrigation at Dawenya. I'm sure if you were there at that time, it brought the whole country together. And, diplomats came to watch where we were, what we were doing. The Asantehene came, Northern region chiefs, big chiefs came, and the whole country was seized by it. I thought that from that position, it worked very well. That area was once a farm a farm during the First Republic. It was abandoned. It became overgrown with weed and everything. But within a short space of time, we turned that place round to a fertile land. Soldiers were involved, prison officers, teachers, university lecturers, mothers and children, you know. And it gave one the feeling that we had a great potential in Ghana, which had not been exploited for a long time. And there we were standing on the brink of a major agricultural revolution. So, would you believe that after about 6 months, Accra rose up from its slumber to find Dawenya rice labeled, grown in Dawenya, with tomatoes, vegetables, in a place which was desert land a few months ago. So that was going on. My next stage, if I had stayed, was to have made a major leap in building something on the Accra Plains, a bigger dam. Anyway, that was history. I didn't stay long enough. But even in Dawenya, people saw the benefits of woolly irrigation. When I say that, I would not say that the government didn't do anything about irrigation. The government had been, or the ministry, had been spending money on irrigation projects in the north, via and so forth and so forth and so. But you see, they had to compete with other departments for money. In the Ministry of Agriculture itself, it had to compete with the Animal Husbandry Division, Fishery Division, and so the money was not.
It was never prioritized.
No, it was. So I thought that if we have free labor to help in moving things along, things would be better for the country. So we moved on to woolly irrigation, and things were moving very well indeed. And it didn't end there. We did an agricultural fair, 20th October 1974, when we brought people, farmers from all over the regions. We brought manufacturers, overseas manufacturers. The farmers talked to them. They listened to lectures, and they saw people doing things at first hand. They were able to question the scientists. And it was a big, big occasion. It was like it was a big carnival.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you were there, but it was like a carnival. On the morning when the thing was opened, it was like carnival, dancing, music, military music, and Air Force in the skies, drummers, native and otherwise, and one Mr. Isuman were composed the Operation Feed Yourself song, and it was sung there, and it was there. And you know, so the momentum in agriculture gathered to such a point that you had to find avenues for it. And that was Operation Feed Yourself, as I saw it.
Is it fair to say that your military background somehow was an incentive in your approach towards farming? Because you brought farming a sense of organization, the way you mobilize people, it was very proactive in a way. Is it fair to suggest that?
I think it is fair to say that, but I would add that it was all my military background and so forth were an asset, because the idea of mobilizing people I learned from the military. The idea of raising the morale of people, making people feel that they matter. That aspect, for example, I tried many times in my own field as director of studies and director of agriculture, and I saw that if you were able to raise the morale of people, you could get them to do about twice as much as otherwise. And if, in fact, it's true even in warfare. If the soldiers are happy, you could get them to move into the valley of death. You remember the poem, half a league onwards, all into the valley of death, rule the 600. Morale. So it helped.
There are so many lessons learned here. If you have to summarize it, how would you say Ghana benefited at the time from Operation Feed Yourself?
The benefits were so obvious. There was food and food everywhere. Food in abundance. And every home was able to get something to eat. Under Operation Feed Yourself, we talked about a few things like poultry. We talked about animals. But especially I was interested in poultry because my aim was to put eggs into every home. In the secondary schools where the school menu at times was dry, to put eggs and so forth. So they had food in the form of the staple food. And they had poultry, fish, and so forth and so on. So I think that, one, people had food to eat. Two, we were able to export food. First of all, when we were not very sure of what we were going to get, we limited the export to only African countries in need, like the Sahel, in the Sahel area, or on humanitarian grounds. But then we went beyond it and started exporting food to other countries. We exported food to Guinea-Bissau. We exported food to Upper Volta. Now, Burkina Faso, and so forth and so on. So then, through that, we were able to get hard currency to enable the government to import things which we could not do locally.
So in this case, was this the first time Ghana was exporting crops other than cash crops?
I didn't know, but I would say yes. Because previously, if there had been any exports at all, it was on ad hoc basis. People only making an adventurous inroad into the export business. But in this case, you got people making a business out of it. And I think that was good. And in a sense also, it trained our people in marketing, in competing with other countries, in producing the sale of things. And I think it did the country a lot of good, so that we didn't have to depend always on cocoa, because at times the cocoa had a feature of not always bringing good prices. So if there were other means of bringing in income, that was good for the government too.
Were there difficulties, barriers, that perhaps would have hindered the complete implementation of Operation Feed Yourself as you would have liked it? Did you encounter any difficulties?
I did. The first difficulty I had, of course, was the difficulty of getting foreign exchange to other agricultural implement and equipment. That was the first difficulty. The second difficulty was that the state of our feeder roads was such that food was not coming through the urban areas. The farmers planted food, they brought it to the wayside. You know, in fact, if you were going from Accra down to Takoradi, or from Accra to Kumasi, they brought the food to the roadside in there. And then at the end of the day, if nobody bought them, they had to carry one, you see. So I thought that if we had a network, a good network of feeder roads, we could transport all this food to the urban areas where it was needed. So that was the second difficulty I had. The third difficulty I had was that people thought that if we say we should be self-reliant, we should not depend upon anybody else. I think that the proper approach was to depend upon the expertise in other parts of the world until such a time that we can do without them. So you have to disabuse people's minds. And that was one of the difficulties I thought I had.
Would you agree with this view that Operation Feed Yourself as a concept in the project would have thrived better under a civilian government and would have probably sustained itself if it wasn't born in a period where Ghana probably experienced one of the most turmoil political?
It's a very difficult question. It's a very difficult question because you have to think of the personalities. Perhaps, you know, as the Commissioner for Agriculture, I didn't sit down in Accra to pontificate on agriculture. I went to the farm gate. I met the farmers. I sat down at a table with them. I ate together with them. So their attitude changed. But it's a very difficult question to answer, whether a civilian minister will put on that dress and walk through miles and miles of bad road, untarred road, to go and see a farmer's effort. That one, it's difficult to answer.
I appreciate your candidness. And thank you very much for letting us this interview.
Thank you. It's a pleasure and an honor to have been able to talk to you and then to give you my ideas. Perhaps somebody somewhere may benefit out of it. Thank you very much.
Enough? Yeah. Excellent. But there was so much we didn't talk about.
Well, I think there's quite a lot there that we can work around that.
Yeah. It really intrigues me. I've learned so much.
Well, sit down.
Thank you. Thank you. I've actually learned a lot.
I'll bring you the raw copy.
All right. Okay.
Raw, I mean, as we did, I'll bring you everything. So
Okay. All right.
Have a look at it.
Okay.
As well.
All right. Okay.
I'll send the other copy to them.
No, to them. Okay. Okay. Thanks a lot.
For your keep.
Okay, that would be lovely.
At least if they come and they change something in it.
Yeah, I know they have changed something. Okay. The last question you asked is a very pertinent question. Last question. And you can't answer it well without offending